The last place he belonged. The Orinox Institute of Intergalactic Sciences wasn't just a school, it was a monument to intellect, a shrine to evolution, and a relentless machine designed to shape the smartest beings in the galaxy into something even smarter. Its halls weren't filled with textbooks and bulletin boards but with neural lattice interfaces, levitating lecture domes, and AI-taught labs that moved through time as easily as they did space. Gravity itself was optional. Nanoservants completed tasks before students even thought to begin them. Even the cafeteria food was custom-engineered to boost neuroplasticity and optimize cognitive performance. This was where the finest minds of thousands of worlds came to prove they deserved to exist among the elite. And smack in the middle of it all, looking like he'd taken the wrong shuttle at the wrong starport, stood Griffin Wade, a human. Griffin didn't glow, float, shape-shift, or process reality across multiple dimensions like some of his classmates. He didn't wear adaptive skin suits or communicate telepathically. His reflexes were slow, his brain chemistry basic, and his blood was just red. He was, by all galactic standards, painfully ordinary. To most of the Orinox students, Griffin wasn't just a joke, he was the punchline. Especially to Valira Cross, a statuesque Thalari student with bioluminescent tendrils of neural tissue flowing from the back of her skull like a cosmic crown. Valira wasn't just intelligent, she was designed to be. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never once been wrong in her life, and if she ever was, reality adjusted accordingly. Griffin, on the other hand, was slumped over a quantum stabilizer, eyebrows scrunched, lips muttering to himself as he tried to decode a series of equations that looked like they'd been written during a bad acid trip on Saturn. His eyes glazed over as the numbers shifted again, refusing to stay still, refusing to make sense. Across the lab, Valira observed him like a scientist watches an uncooperative lab rat. Still struggling with transdimensional stabilization, Wade, she asked, her voice syrupy with condescension. Griffin sighed. I'm struggling with all of it, really. But sure, let's pretend that's the issue. Laughter echoed from the other students. Even their professor, a six-eyed serpentine creature who'd probably seen galaxies die and be born again, rubbed two of his temples in silent defeat. You know, Valira said, leaning forward, it's kind of adorable how hard you try. Sad, but adorable. Griffin didn't bother to respond. He just stared at the interface like it owed him money. Around him, species that had evolved over tens of thousands of years to think faster than light and perceive multiple timelines simultaneously breezed through the assignment with ease. He was the outlier. The anomaly. The guy from Earth, a planet so backwater it had only recently stopped blowing itself up every few centuries. He didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. But the funny thing was, he stayed anyway. The lab session crawled forward. The professor eventually stopped calling on him. Students stopped pretending to care whether Griffin was getting it. And Griffin? He just kept trying. Because maybe he didn't have a genetically perfect brain. Maybe he didn't process time in 4 directions. But there was something stubborn in his bones, something that refused to quit even when he was miles behind and drowning in numbers that made no sense. He wasn't fast. He wasn't smart. But Griffin Wade didn't leave. Not when it got hard. Not when he was mocked. Not even when the universe told him he didn't belong. And that, though no one realized it yet, was going to be a problem. What he wasn't supposed to see. Most students at Orinox Institute spent their late nights fine-tuning gravitic formulas or polishing predictive AI models. But Valira Cross, top of her class, daughter of a Thalari noble family, and proud owner of the galaxy's most intimidating GPA, was currently breaking into one of the most secure data vaults in the known universe. It had started with a glitch. Just a flicker on a human's terminal during lab, Griffin Wade, the Earth-born oddball everyone loved to mock. She hadn't paid much attention at first. Griffin was, after all, a walking joke. Unenhanced, slow, inefficient. A sad relic from a species that barely scraped its way into the interstellar community. But that flicker, it showed something she wasn't supposed to see. Just for a second. A line of forbidden code. A warning, do not let them remember. At first, Valira assumed it was a prank. Some dusty piece of legacy code accidentally surfacing. But something about it nagged at her, and Valira was not the type to ignore a loose thread. Especially one tied to a species that, frankly, had no business being in Orinox to begin with. Now she was elbow-deep in firewalls designed to keep out even the most determined information thieves. But Valira wasn't just determined, she was elite. Her neural lattice glowed faintly as she activated a tracing algorithm originally developed by her family for political espionage. It slid through security layers like a knife through warm synth butter. And then it appeared. A single file. Old. Obsolete format. Nearly undecodable. But she had tools. The system groaned as it translated the ancient data into something readable. And as the words began to scroll across her interface, Valira sat forward, breath catching in her throat. Earth, Sector Z. Class X catastrophic species. Status, expunged from galactic records. By order of the Council. Valira froze. This wasn't just a scandal. This was a secret so dangerous the galaxy had chosen to erase it. Humanity wasn't just some primitive backwater species. According to these files, they had once been something terrifying. She scrolled through fragmented war logs. Millennia ago, humans had reached the stars with crude tech and chaotic instincts. The galaxy hadn't taken them seriously, until it was too late. They didn't win battles with better weapons. They won with grit. Recklessness. Insane strategies that no logical species would attempt. When others surrendered, humans doubled down. When others planned for victory, humans planned for survival, at any cost. One section described ships barely held together with duct tape and desperation, somehow outmaneuvering fleets built by species that had mastered spacetime itself. Another logged a final battle so brutal that entire systems were reduced to ash. And then came the video. A ragged group of human survivors. Bloodied, half dead, surrounded by ruin. And yet, still standing. The message they broadcast was burned into Valira's mind. We don't stop. We don't surrender. We don't break. Erase our name, burn our past. It won't matter. One day, we'll come back. The screen went black. Valira sat in silence, heart pounding. And then came a sound. A footstep behind her. She spun around, already defensive, only to find Griffin Wade leaning casually in the doorway, arms crossed, smirking like someone who knew exactly what she'd just seen. So, he said with maddening calm, you found out. Valira's throat went dry. She had mocked him. Laughed at him. Considered him an academic charity case. But now, as she stared into his unbothered expression, one terrifying thought took root in her mind. Griffin Wade wasn't a joke. He was the warning. And the universe had just remembered what it tried so hard to forget. The truth he already knew. Griffin Wade had always been a mystery at Orinox Institute. Not because he was smart, he wasn't, not by their standards. Not because he was strong, he definitely wasn't. He was just, there. A quiet anomaly from a forgotten corner of the galaxy. The Earth kid who didn't belong in a place built by super geniuses and psionic aristocrats. Which is why Valira Cross felt like her brain had been short-circuited when Griffin leaned against the lab door, arms crossed, wearing the same crooked smirk he always did, and said, "So, you found out." She couldn't breathe for a second. Couldn't think. Just hours ago, she'd broken through one of the highest security firewalls in the known universe, because of a glitch. A single flicker on Griffin's lab terminal had led her down a rabbit hole of lost files, forbidden history, and one haunting truth: humanity had been wiped from the galactic record not because they were weak, but because they were once unstoppable. She'd read the war logs, the warnings, the final broadcast. We don't stop. We don't surrender. We don't break. She thought she'd be the one delivering this revelation to him. But here he was, relaxed, unshaken, looking like he'd just gotten out of bed and was mildly amused to find himself at the center of a galactic cover-up. You knew, she said flatly, struggling to keep her voice from shaking. Yeah, he replied, shrugging like he'd just admitted to forgetting an appointment. I've always known. Valira's hands clenched. You've always known that your people were erased from history? That the entire Dominion decided you were too dangerous to exist? And your response is yeah, that tracks. Griffin gave her a sheepish smile. I mean, would it help if I panicked? She wanted to scream. To shake him. This is bigger than you. Your whole species was deleted, he finished for her. I know. I'm the last guy who should be here. Not exactly something I can bring up in orientation. Valira stepped back, her mind spinning. This is insane. Everything we've been taught, everything we believed about humans, it was all a lie. Griffin tilted his head. Or just a version of the truth someone was comfortable with. For the first time, she saw something behind that easy smile. Something old. Tired. Maybe even dangerous. You came here for a reason, she said slowly. Yup. To remind us? Griffin's smile faded, just a bit. To remind the galaxy. They forgot us. Thought they could erase what we were. But you can't scrub away a fire by pretending it didn't burn. Valira stared at him, something cold settling in her chest. So what now? You light the match again? He didn't answer right away. Just looked her dead in the eye and said, that depends. Are you going to turn me in? Every part of her training screamed yes. She had access logs, classified files, a literal human standing in front of her who shouldn't exist. She could report him, shut this down, be the hero of the Dominion. And yet, she thought of the smirk. The glitch. The final broadcast. The way Griffin didn't flinch when the truth came out, didn't cower like a mistake, but stood tall like a reminder. She exhaled, defeated. No. I'm not going to turn you in. He grinned. Welcome to the Resistance. We are not partners. We kinda are. I hate you. You love me. And as she followed him down the hall, Valira realized something terrifying. She'd stopped seeing Griffin Wade as a joke. And the galaxy wouldn't be far behind. The Resistance nobody saw coming. Griffin Wade didn't look like a threat. He never had. To most of the Orinox Institute, he was a punchline wrapped in denim and sarcasm, a human anomaly in a school built for beings who could calculate multiverse equations before breakfast. He didn't move with grace, he wasn't genetically enhanced, and half the time, he looked like he barely knew where he was. But Valira Cross, top of her class, daughter of a long line of elite Zari tacticians, had started to see something different. It started when she broke into the Forbidden Archive. She wasn't supposed to. She wasn't even supposed to know it existed. But a glitch on Griffin's lab terminal, a flash of garbled code and a cryptic warning, had stirred her curiosity. That curiosity led her to a data vault buried so deep it hadn't been accessed in thousands of years. The files she found there weren't just restricted, they were erased from public history. A galactic war. A forgotten species. Earth, classified as Class X catastrophic. And at the center of it all, humans. According to the records, they weren't just violent. They were uncontrollable. Illogical. Impossible to predict. They didn't follow tactics, didn't adhere to survival logic. They broke rules, not out of rebellion, but because rules bored them. They improvised in chaos. And the more desperate things got, the stronger they became. One message echoed through the last surviving war log, transmitted across the stars after humanity was wiped from the galactic record. We don't stop. We don't surrender. We don't break. Erase our name, but not our purpose. We will return. Valira should have reported him. She had the evidence, Griffin standing there, casual as ever, watching her process the truth like it was just another Tuesday. And that's when it hit her, the records weren't just about humans. They were about him. You're not supposed to exist, she'd whispered. He'd smiled. Yeah. That's kind of our thing. She had no comeback. No way to explain why her heart pounded when he said it. It wasn't just that he had survived in a place that should have eaten him alive. It was that he didn't care that he wasn't supposed to. Like he'd been waiting for this moment. Like the entire galaxy had forgotten something crucial, and he was here to remind them. And worst of all, he wasn't alone. How many more of you are out there? She asked. He hesitated. Not enough to matter. Yet. Valira felt something twist in her chest. Because if that, yet, ever became, now, nothing would ever be the same. You're planning something, she said. Griffin didn't deny it. I'm reminding the universe what it chose to forget. And suddenly, everything she knew about galactic stability, military doctrine, and species hierarchy started to crack. Not because Griffin Wade was a super soldier. Not because he had some hidden power. But because he was living proof that the Dominion had lied. That maybe the true danger wasn't power, but unpredictability. She should have walked away. Should have turned him in. But as she looked at him, arms crossed, grin half-formed, defiance in his eyes, Valira realized something terrifying. She wasn't just protecting a secret. She was joining a cause. Stars help me, she muttered. I'm not going to turn you in, am I? Nope, he said, with maddening cheer. She exhaled. I swear, if I get arrested for this, I'll tell them it was all your idea. She groaned, but followed him anyway. And as they disappeared down the hallway, Valira Cross knew the truth. This wasn't just about one human. It was about all of them. And the galaxy wasn't ready. Secrets buried in stardust. At first, Tessa Rhine had dismissed Griffin Wade as a cosmic fluke, a bumbling human somehow enrolled at the elite Solaris Academy, where minds were measured in teraflops and egos inflated by genetic design. He was messy, slow, always behind on his assignments, and forever squinting at equations like they were written in an alien language, which, to be fair, they often were. The rest of the student body viewed him as an amusing outlier, a novelty from a planet most civilizations considered a primitive backwater. But what started as laughter was beginning to feel wrong. Tessa had always been sharp, methodical, and proud of her Zarnian heritage, descendants of a long line of strategists and scholars. She didn't tolerate mystery. And yet, something about Griffin didn't line up. His attitude, his endurance, the strange way he shrugged off humiliation like it didn't touch him. Like he knew something no one else did. Then came the glitch. A flash of forbidden data across his lab terminal, untraceable and unapproved. Tessa should have reported it. Instead, curiosity got the better of her. And when she finally bypassed the Academy's firewalls, she found more than she bargained for, a classified archive sealed by the Universal Historical Council. Access was denied. Again and again. But Tessa didn't stop. She broke through. What she found wasn't just hidden history, it was a galactic bombshell. Earth, once labeled Sector Z, was redacted from history as a Class X catastrophic species. The records were ancient, fragmented, and chilling. Humans had once sparked a war that nearly tore the known galaxy apart. Not because of advanced weapons. Not because of biological supremacy. But because they refused to obey the rules. Where other civilizations yielded, they resisted. Where logic demanded retreat, they doubled down. They didn't just defy the odds, they rewrote them. Tessa, read the final transmission. We don't stop. We don't surrender. We don't break. You can erase our name, but not our return. She stared at the words, hands trembling. The screen flickered again. For a second, she thought she triggered an alarm. Instead, she heard footsteps. Griffin stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame like he owned the place. His expression? That same insufferable, relaxed smirk. So, he said, you found out. Tessa's first instinct was to deny it. Pretend she saw nothing. But the look in his eyes told her there was no point. He knew. And worse, he'd always known. You knew? She said, stunned. Yeah, he shrugged, figured it'd be more fun if you found out on your own. You're insane. Nope, Griffin said, just human. And that's when it hit her, this wasn't just about an old archive or a repressed war. Griffin Wade wasn't the mistake. He was the message. The warning buried in stardust and silence. A living reminder of something the galaxy had worked hard to forget. You're not the only one, are you? She asked. Griffin's smile faded, just slightly. Not yet. Tessa took a step back, breath caught in her throat. If there were more like him, more humans quietly watching, waiting, it meant everything she believed about balance, order, and supremacy was a lie. Why now? She asked. Griffin's eyes held something older than sarcasm. Because the galaxy forgot. And it's time it remembered. She should have turned him in. Should have hit the emergency beacon and ended it all. But she didn't. Because in her gut, something told her this wasn't a threat. It was a reckoning. And it had already begun. The human variable. No one expected Captain Mira Thorne to hesitate. She was a by-the-book officer of the Dominion's Tactical Corps, born into a legacy of order, efficiency, and absolute control. Her record was flawless. Her decisions, precise. Her logic, unshakable. But that was before Eli Mercer walked into her war zone like he was late to a backyard barbecue, carrying a half-rusted rifle and wearing a jacket that looked like it lost a fight with a blender. She had heard the stories, humanity's return to the galactic stage, whispers of survivors from the supposedly extinct species, but she hadn't expected him to look so average. And yet, Mira watched from the ridge, scanning through her visor as the man moved through the battlefield like gravity owed him an apology. Dominion squads closed in from all sides, elite soldiers, enhanced reflexes, high-caliber plasma gear. It should have been a massacre. But Eli didn't run. He didn't fire wild. He didn't even take cover. Instead, he moved like a man who didn't know fear. Or worse, didn't respect it. She saw him dodge a gravpulse by half an inch. Saw him disarm a sergeant using nothing but momentum and stubbornness. Saw him crack a joke in the middle of it all, as if he'd wandered into a bar fight and decided to have fun. Is he, laughing? Mira muttered to herself. The Dominion squad didn't stand a chance. One by one, they fell, not dead, but disarmed, confused, and completely outplayed. Eli moved with chaotic grace, turning every rule of Dominion combat on its head. He didn't overpower. He outthought. Outmaneuvered. He turned strength into weakness by refusing to fight the way everyone else did. By the time the final soldier dropped, Eli stood in the center of the wreckage, stretching like he'd just wrapped up a morning jog. Myra's calm crackled to life. Do we engage? She didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she stepped out of cover, approached him with slow, cautious steps. Eli noticed, gave her a lazy salute. Captain Mandibles, right? He called out with a grin. Mira sighed. Close. It's Thorne. Ah, my bad. He shrugged. You people always look like you're ready to vaporize someone for mispronouncing your name. You just took down a Dominion strike team. He tilted his head. They started it. You had no armor. No enhancement. Just a gun older than most civilizations. Don't forget the charm, he said, winking. Mira folded her arms. How? He scratched the back of his neck. Honestly? Just a lifetime of bad decisions and getting real good at surviving them. She should have arrested him. Should have called in backup. Should have followed protocol. But as she looked into his eyes, she didn't see recklessness. She saw experience. Pain. Something ancient and defiant. You're not the only one, she said quietly. Eli's smile faded just enough to confirm it. Nope. She inhaled slowly. You're planning something. He shrugged. Planning? No. Preparing? Yeah. The galaxy thinks humans are gone. We're just waiting for the right moment to remind them. And what happens then? Eli's expression turned serious for the first time. Then we see if the galaxy learned anything from the last time. Mira stood there, heart pounding. Every lesson, every doctrine, every truth she'd built her life on, it all cracked a little under the weight of that conversation. Eli Mercer wasn't just a survivor. He was a warning. And she had no idea what was coming next.